The train hissed to a stop in a cloud of dust and steam, and Lydia Hale stepped onto the platform clutching a worn carpet bag and a lie she could no longer afford to tell. Within 3 minutes, the man who'd promised to marry her would call her a fraud in front of the entire town. Within 5, she'd be standing alone on that platform, abandoned, with nowhere left to go. And then a scarred stranger with empty eyes would step forward and say 4 words that would crack open both their lives. "I'll take her." In a town that had already decided she was worthless, one man's quiet defiance would ignite a storm neither of them saw coming. If you want to see where this story goes, stay with me until the end, and drop a like and comment with the city you're watching from so I can see how far this journey reaches. The town of Millhaven sat low and mean against the prairie, a scatter of clapboard buildings baking under a sky too big to care. It wasn't the kind of place people came to on purpose. It was the kind of place you ended up when the world had finished with you elsewhere. Elias Crow knew that better than most. He stood at the edge of the train depot, hat pulled low, shoulders square against the weight of eyes that never quite landed on him. The platform was crowded, Saturday afternoon, supply train due in, but the space around him stayed empty. People moved past him the way water flows around a stone. Not hostile, just careful. He didn't blame them. A scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw, pale and jagged, the kind that told a story even if you never asked. His hands were scarred too, knuckles thick and uneven, fingers that had done work most men didn't want to imagine. He was 34 and looked older, quiet, in a way that made people nervous. The train whistle screamed and the crowd shifted forward. Elias stayed where he was. He wasn't here for supplies. He wasn't here for mail. He was here because Samuel Barlow had asked him to be, though Barlow hadn't said why. Just a scribbled note slipped under his cabin door 3 days ago. Be at the depot Saturday, 2 o'clock. Important. Elias didn't owe Barlow anything, but the man had given him work once when no one else would. So here he stood, waiting, while the town pretended he wasn't. The train lurched to a full stop, brakes shrieking, doors banged open. A handful of passengers stepped down, a merchant with a crate of tools, a family with 3 small children, an older man in a dusty suit, and then her. She was young, maybe 22, 23, dark hair pinned back under a plain bonnet, a faded blue dress that had been mended more than once. She carried a single carpet bag, gripping the handle with both hands like it might try to escape. She looked around this platform with an expression Elias recognized immediately. Hope, fragile and desperate. The crowd had noticed her too. Whispers started, quick and sharp. That's her. Barlow's bride. Came all the way from St. Louis, I heard. Poor thing doesn't know what she's in for. Elias's jaw tightened. He didn't know what they meant, but the tone told him enough. Samuel Barlow pushed through the crowd, moving fast. He was a big man, broad-shouldered and loud, the kind who filled a room just by walking into it. He owned the freight company and half the land on the east side of town. People liked him because he bought drinks and slapped backs and made you feel important when he spoke to you. Elias had never trusted him. Barlow stopped in front of the young woman, grinning wide. "Miss Hale," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Welcome to Millhaven." She smiled, relief flooding her face. "Mr. Barlow, thank you for— Let me take that bag for you." He reached for it, but she held on. "I can manage." "Suit yourself." His grin didn't falter, but something flickered behind his eyes. "Come on then, let's get you settled." He turned and started walking. She followed, struggling to keep up with his long strides. The crowd didn't disperse. They followed too, slow and curious, like vultures circling. Elias stayed at the edge, watching. Barlow led her to the center of the platform near the depot office, where the light was brightest and the most people could see. He stopped and turned to face her, hands on his hips. "So," he said, still loud, still smiling. "You ready to get married?" Her face went pale. Yes, of course. That's why I came. Good. Good." He nodded, then tilted his head. "Just one thing before we head to the church." She blinked. "What's that?" "The money." Silence dropped over the platform like a stone into water. Lydia's smile faltered. "I'm sorry?" "The money," Barlow repeated, slower now. In your letters, you said your father left you an inheritance. $2,000, wasn't it? Her face went from pale to gray. I didn't say. You did. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket and held it up. Right here. My father passed last year and left me a modest inheritance. I am not wealthy, but I am not without means. That's what you wrote. She stared at the letter like it might burn her. You didn't mean what? Barlow's voice sharpened. You didn't mean to lie? I wasn't lying, She swallowed hard, gripping the bag tighter. I wanted you to know I could contribute, that I wasn't a burden. So you do have the money? No. The word came out barely above a whisper. The crowd leaned in. Barlow's smile vanished. No, I don't have anything, her voice cracked. My father died in debt. I sold everything just to afford the train ticket. I thought. She stopped, tears welling up. I thought if I could just get here, I could prove I was that I could be useful, that I could work. I didn't think it mattered. Barlow's laugh was harsh and ugly. You lied to me. You made me think I was getting a wife with means, and instead I get. He looked her up and down like she was a piece of spoiled meat. Nothing. She flinched. I paid for advertisements, Barlow continued, louder now, playing to the crowd. I paid for postage. I told everyone in this town I was bringing in a respectable woman to be my wife. And you show up here with nothing but lies and an empty bag? Please, Lydia whispered. I can work. I can cook. I can sew. I don't need a servant, Barlow snapped. I need a wife who can pull her weight. Someone who brings something to the table besides desperation. The crowd murmured, some in agreement, some in discomfort. Lydia's hands were shaking. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to deceive you. Save it. Barlow turned away from her, addressing the crowd now. Let this be a lesson to anyone thinking about mail-order marriages. You get what you pay for, and sometimes you don't even get that. Laughter rippled through the onlookers. Not kind laughter. The kind that comes when people are relieved they're not the one being humiliated. Lydia stood frozen, tears streaming down her face, clutching that worn bag like it was the only thing keeping her upright. No one moved to help her. No one spoke. Elias felt something twist in his chest. He knew that look. He'd seen it in the mirror more times than he could count. The look of someone who'd run out of places to go. He didn't plan what happened next. Didn't think it through. He just stepped forward, boots thudding on the wooden platform, and the crowd parted without meaning to. Barlow turned, surprised. Crow, what do you want? Elias ignored him. He looked at Lydia instead. You got anywhere to go? His voice was low, rough from disuse. She stared at him, startled. No. Then I'll take you. The platform went dead silent. Barlow's face darkened. The hell you will. Elias finally looked at him. You just said you don't want her. That doesn't mean you get to. She needs a place to stay. I've got one. And what exactly are you offering her, Crow? Barlow's voice dripped with insinuation. A warm bed and no questions asked. The crowd shifted, uneasy now. Elias didn't rise to the bait. He kept his voice steady. A roof, food, work if she wants it, no strings. Barlow laughed, sharp and mean. You expect anyone to believe that? Don't care what anyone believes. Lydia was staring at him like he'd just sprouted wings. Why would you do that? Elias met her eyes. They were brown, red-rimmed from crying, and full of suspicion, smart. Because no one else is, he said simply. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked around at the crowd, at the faces that had watched her fall apart and done nothing. Then she looked back at him. Okay, she said quietly. Barlow stepped between them. You can't be serious. I am. She lifted her chin, just a fraction. I'd rather take my chances with a stranger than stay here and be laughed at. You'll regret it, Barlow said coldly. He's not what you think. Neither are you, she shot back. And for a second, Elias almost smiled. Barlow's face went red. Fine, go with him, but don't come crying to me when you realize what kind of man he really is. He turned and shoved his way through the crowd, which parted quickly. The murmurs started immediately. Elias didn't wait for them to get louder. He nodded toward the edge of the platform. Wagons this way. Lydia hesitated, then followed. The crowd watched them go, whispering, speculating, judging. Elias didn't look back. The wagon was old but sturdy, pulled by a gray mare named Dust. Elias helped Lydia up onto the bench. She flinched when he touched her arm just for a second, then climbed up beside her. He snapped the reins and they rolled out of town. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The prairie stretched out in every direction, flat and golden under the late afternoon sun. The air smelled like dry grass and dust. A hawk circled overhead, lazy and indifferent. Finally, Lydia broke the silence. "Why did you do that?" Elias kept his eyes on the road. "Told you. You needed help. But you don't know me." "Don't need to." She frowned. "Everyone back there, they looked at you like you were dangerous." "I am." She went very still. Elias glanced at her. "But not to you." "How do I know that?" "You don't." He shrugged. "But you didn't have a lot of options." She looked away, jaw tight. "No, I didn't." They rode in silence for another mile. Then she said, "What did he mean? When he said you're not what I think?" Elias's hands tightened on the reins. "People talk." "About what?" "Things I've done." "What kind of things?" He didn't answer. She studied him, eyes narrowed. "Are you going to hurt me?" "No." "Are you going to try to take advantage of me?" "No." "Then what do you want?" Elias thought about that. Really thought about it. "Nothing," he said finally. "Just seemed like the right thing to do." Lydia laughed, short and bitter. "No one does the right thing for nothing." "Maybe not." He glanced at her. "But I'm not asking you for anything. You can leave whenever you want. I'll take you back to town, put you on the next train if that's what you decide. No hard feelings." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she looked out at the endless prairie and said, "I don't have money for a train ticket. I'll pay for it." "Why?" "Because it's your choice." She didn't respond, just sat there, gripping her bag, watching the horizon. The cabin appeared an hour later, a dark shape against the dying light. It was small, one room, maybe two, set in a shallow dip in the land. A thin line of smoke rose from the chimney. A few scraggly bushes clung to life near the walls. It looked like exactly what it was, a place where someone lived alone because they had to. Elias pulled the wagon to a stop and climbed down. He held out a hand to help Lydia, and this time she took it without flinching. Her boots hit the dirt, and she looked around, taking it all in. "This is it," Elias said. She nodded slowly. "It's quiet." "Yeah." "How long have you lived here?" 5 years. "Alone?" "Yeah." She turned to him. "And now you're just going to let a stranger move in?" "Stranger who needs a place to stay," he corrected. "Still strange." He almost smiled. "Yeah, it is." He led her inside. The cabin was sparse. A stove in one corner, a table and 2 chairs, a narrow bed pushed against the far wall. Shelves lined with canned goods, a few books, a rifle mounted above the door. Everything was clean but worn, functional but not welcoming. Lydia set her bag down near the door and looked around. "You can have the bed," Elias said. "I'll sleep on the floor." "I'm not taking your bed." "You are." It's not up for debate." His tone was firm but not unkind. "You're a guest. Guests get the bed." She looked like she wanted to argue, but exhaustion was written all over her face. She nodded instead. "Thank you. You hungry?" Yes." He moved to the stove and started pulling out ingredients: beans, bacon, bread. His movements were practiced, efficient. Lydia watched him for a moment, then said, "Can I help?" "If you want." She stepped forward and took over slicing the bread while he worked the stove. They moved around each other carefully, like dancers who didn't know the steps yet. The food was simple but hot. They ate in silence, sitting across from each other at the small table. When they finished, Lydia looked at him and said, "I'm sorry." Elias frowned. "For what?" "For lying. In my letters, I shouldn't have done that. You were trying to survive. That doesn't make it right." He shrugged. People do what they have to. Do you really believe that? He thought about it. Yeah, I do. She studied him, something softening in her expression. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone cruel, maybe? Or someone who'd want something in return. I don't want anything. Everyone wants something. He met her eyes. Not from you. She looked away, blinking hard. After a moment, she stood and started clearing the dishes. Elias moved to help, but she waved him off. I can do this, she said quietly. I need to do something. He nodded and stepped back. He watched her work. Small, precise movements, scrubbing the tin plates with more care than they probably deserved. She was trying to hold herself together. He could see it in the set of her shoulders, the way her hand shook just slightly. When she finished, she dried her hands on a rag and turned to him. I'll stay, she said. For now. If the offer still stands. It does. And if I decide to leave? Then you leave. She nodded slowly. Okay. Okay. They stood there for a moment, two people who barely knew each other, bound together by circumstance and nothing else. Then Elias said, You should get some rest. What about you? I'll be fine. She hesitated, then moved toward the bed. She sat down on the edge, testing the mattress, then lay back fully clothed. Elias pulled a blanket from a chest and spread it on the floor near the stove. He lay down, hat over his face, and closed his eyes. For a long time, he listened to her breathe, uneven, hitching, like she was trying not to cry. He didn't say anything. Eventually, the breathing steadied. Sleep took her. Elias lay awake, staring at the ceiling through the gap in his hat. He'd brought a stranger into his home. A woman. Alone. The town would hear about it by morning. They'd have plenty to say. He didn't care. But he wondered, just for a moment, what the hell he'd just started. The next morning came cold and gray. Elias woke before dawn, as always. He fed the stove, made coffee, and stepped outside to check on dust. When he came back in, Lydia was awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. Morning, he said. She looked up, startled. Morning. He poured 2 cups of coffee and handed her one. She took it, wrapping her hands around the warmth. Sleep okay? He asked. Better than I expected. He nodded and sat down at the table. After a moment, she joined him. They drank in silence. Then she said, What do you do here? For work, I mean. Ranch hand, sometimes carpenter, whatever needs doing. Do you have animals? Just the horse. What about crops? Garden in the back, enough to get by. She nodded thoughtfully. I could help with that, if you want. You don't have to. I know, but I'd like to. I need to do something useful. Elias looked at her. Really looked at her. There was a determination in her eyes that hadn't been there yesterday. Something stubborn and unbroken. All right, he said. You can help. A faint smile crossed her face. The first real one he'd seen. Thank you. He nodded and stood. I've got to head into town later. Pick up supplies. You want to come? Or you want to stay here? Her smile vanished. I'd rather stay here. Figured. Will people talk? They're already talking. She looked down at her coffee. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make trouble for you. You didn't. He pulled on his coat. People talk no matter what I do. This just gives them something new. Still. Don't worry about it. He headed for the door, then paused. Lock it behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me. She stood, alarmed. Why? Is someone... No, just being careful. She nodded slowly. All right. He left, and she locked the door behind him. Town was worse than he expected. The whispers started the moment he hitched dust outside the general store. People stared, some openly, some from behind windows and half-closed doors. Elias ignored them and went inside. The store was run by a man named Clemens, a wiry old man with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. Crow, Clemens said, not looking up from his ledger. Heard you took in Barlow's girl. She's not his girl. That's not what people are saying. Elias set a list on the counter. People say a lot of things. Clemens finally looked up, one eyebrow raised. You know what you're doing? Helping someone who needed it. That all it is? Elias met his eyes. Yeah. Clemens stared at him for a long moment, then shrugged and started gathering the items on the list. Your funeral. Elias paid, took the supplies, and headed back outside. That's when he ran into Thomas Greer. Greer was the town's self-appointed moral authority, a thin, nervous man who ran the church and spent most of his time worrying about other people's souls. Mr. Croas, Greer said, stepping into his path. A word, if you please. Elias stopped. Make it quick. I understand you've taken Miss Hale into your home. That's right. Unmarried. That's right. Greer's face pinched. You understand how that looks. Don't care how it looks. Well, you should. The Bible is quite clear on, I'm not interested in a sermon, Greer. This isn't about sermons. It's about decency, propriety. You can't simply... She had nowhere to go, Elias said flatly. I gave her a place to stay. That's all. That's all. Greer's voice rose. You expect people to believe that? A man and a woman, alone, under one roof? It's scandalous. Then don't think about it. I'm not the only one who... I don't care. Elias stepped past him. We're done here. Greer sputtered behind him, but Elias didn't stop. He loaded the supplies into the wagon and headed home. When he got back, Lydia was outside, kneeling in the dirt near the garden. She'd found a hoe and was turning the soil, sleeves rolled up, hair falling loose from its pins. She looked up when she heard the wagon and wiped sweat from her forehead. How was town? She asked. Same as always. She studied his face. That bad? Nothing I can't handle. She stood, brushing dirt from her skirt. I found some seeds in the shed. Thought I'd try planting them. Is that all right? Yeah, that's fine. She hesitated. Did people, say things? About me? Some. What did you tell them? The truth. You needed help. I gave it. She looked at him for a long moment. And they believed you? Doesn't matter if they did. She frowned. It matters to me. Why? Because I don't want to make your life harder than it already is. Elias shook his head. My life's been hard for a long time. You're not the reason. She didn't look convinced, but she didn't argue. He unloaded the supplies, and they spent the rest of the day in quiet work. Him fixing a broken fence, her tending the garden. When evening came, they ate together again. This time she cooked. Simple fare, but better than what he usually made. You're good at this, he said. She smiled faintly. I had to be. My mother died when I was young. I took care of my father after that. That why you came out here? After he died? Partly. She stared at her plate. Mostly, I just didn't have anywhere else to go. You got family? No, just me. He nodded. Same here. She looked up, surprised. You don't have anyone? Not anymore. What happened to them? Elias's jaw tightened. That's a long story. I've got time. He met her eyes, saw the openness there, the tentative trust, and he realized he didn't want to lie to her. My parents died when I was 15, he said slowly. Fever took them both in the same week. After that, I went west. Did odd jobs. Ended up working as a lawman for a while. Her eyes widened. You were a lawman? Deputy, in a mining town up north. What happened? He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I killed 3 men. She went very still. It was legal, he continued, voice flat. They'd robbed a payroll wagon, killed the driver. I tracked them down, gave them a chance to surrender. They didn't take it. So you shot them? Yeah. She didn't say anything. After that, Elias said, I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't wear the badge, couldn't look at myself, so I came here, found this place. Stayed. He looked at her. That's what Barlow meant. That's what people whisper about. Lydia's face was unreadable. Then she said, Did you have a choice? What? When you shot them, did you have a choice? He blinked. Yeah, I could have let them go. And they would have killed someone else. Maybe. Probably. She leaned forward. You did what you had to do. That doesn't make you a bad person. Doesn't make me a good one either. Maybe not. She shrugged. But you helped me when no one else would. That counts for something. He didn't know what to say to that. They finished eating in silence. The days turned into a week. Lydia settled into the cabin like she'd always been there. She cleaned, cooked, mended clothes, tended the garden. Elias worked the land, fixed what needed fixing, and tried not to think too hard about the strange comfort of having someone else around. They didn't talk much, but the silence between them grew easier. And then the trouble started. It was a Saturday afternoon when the first visitor came. Elias was out back splitting wood when he heard the sound of hooves. He grabbed his rifle and came around the front just as a rider pulled up, a young man named Cole, one of Barlow's workers. "Crow," Cole said, tipping his hat. "What do you want?" "Mr. Barlow sent me. He wants to talk." "About what?" "About the girl." Elias's grip tightened on the rifle. "She's not his concern." "He thinks she is." "He's wrong." Cole shifted in his saddle, uneasy. "Look, I'm just delivering a message. He wants you to bring her back to town. He's willing to reconsider." "No." "He said you'd say that." "Then why are you here?" Cole hesitated. "He also said if you don't bring her back, he'll come get her himself." Elias stepped forward. "You tell Barlow if he sets foot on my land, he won't leave it." Cole paled. I know. Now go." Cole turned his horse and rode off fast. Elias watched him disappear, then went back inside. Lydia was standing near the window, face tight with worry. "I heard," she said. "He's not getting near you." "Maybe I should just go back. If it would stop." "No." His voice was hard. "You're not going back to him." "But if he comes here, then I'll deal with it." She stared at him. "Why are you doing this?" "Because it's right. That's not enough of a reason to risk." "It is for me." She opened her mouth, closed it, then she nodded. Okay. But he could see the fear in her eyes, and he knew it was only a matter of time before Barlow made good on his threat. Barlow didn't come that night or the next, but the waiting was worse than the confrontation would have been. Elias kept the rifle closer than usual. He slept lighter, woke at every sound. Lydia noticed but didn't say anything. She just moved through the cabin like a ghost, too quiet, too careful, like she was trying not to take up space. On the third day, he found her sitting outside at dawn, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. "You sleep at all?" he asked. She shook her head. "Couldn't." He sat down beside her on the step. The air was cold, sharp enough to sting. "I'm going to make this worse for you," she said after a while. "Aren't I?" "You're not making anything worse. People already don't trust you, and now you've got me here, and Barlow's angry, and Lydia. He waited until she looked at him. "I made my choice. You didn't force it on me." "But why?" Her voice cracked. "Why would you choose this? You don't owe me anything." He thought about that. Really thought about it. "Maybe I'm tired of living like the world's already decided what I am," he said finally. "Maybe I wanted to do something that wasn't about fear or reputation or what people expect." She studied his face. "You're a strange man, Elias Crow." "Yeah, I know." She almost smiled. Then she pulled the blanket tighter and looked back out at the prairie. "What do we do if he comes?" "We deal with it." "That's not a plan." "It's the only one I've got." She didn't look reassured, but she nodded anyway. They sat there in silence until the sun broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Then Elias stood and went to check the fences. Lydia stayed on the step, watching him go. Cool. The first real crack in the silence came 4 days later. Elias had gone into town to pick up nails and wire. He told Lydia to stay inside, lock the door, don't open it for anyone. She'd promised. But when he got back, she was outside, standing near the garden with her arms crossed, and there was someone else there. A woman. Elias pulled the wagon to a stop and climbed down, hand already moving toward the rifle. But the woman turned, saw him, and held up both hands. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she said quickly. She was older, maybe 45, with graying hair tied back in a bun and a plain dress covered by a work apron. Her face was lined and sun-weathered, but her eyes were sharp. Elias didn't lower his hand. "Who are you?" "Ruth Kane. I run the boarding house in town." She glanced at Lydia. I came to meet your guest. Why? Ruth's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Because I wanted to see if the rumors were true. And they're not. She looked back at Lydia. She's not what people are saying. Lydia frowned. What are people saying? Ruth hesitated. That that you and Mr. Crow are... We're not, Lydia said flatly. I believe you. Ruth's tone was matter of fact. But that won't stop the talk. Elias finally moved his hand away from the rifle. You didn't come all the way out here just to tell us that. No. Ruth looked at him directly. I came to offer help, if you need it. That stopped him. Help how? Work, for one thing, if Miss Hale wants it. I could use someone at the boarding house, cleaning, cooking, laundry. It's honest work and it pays. Lydia's eyes widened. You'd hire me? If you're willing. But you don't know me. I know enough. Ruth's voice softened. I know what it's like to have nowhere to go, and I know what it's like when someone gives you a chance. Lydia looked at Elias, uncertain. He shrugged. Your choice. She turned back to Ruth. Why would you do this? Because Barlow's a bastard, Ruth said bluntly, and I don't like the way he treated you. And because this town has a habit of kicking people when they're down. Someone's got to push back. Lydia blinked, surprised. Ruth smiled, small and wry. Also, I genuinely need the help. My back isn't what it used to be. I'll do it, Lydia said quickly. If the offer's real, I'll do it. It's real. Ruth nodded. You can start Monday if you like. I'll pay you fair wages. Room and board included if you want it, but... She glanced at Elias. I'm guessing you'll be staying here. Lydia hesitated, then nodded. Yes, for now. Ruth's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Understanding, maybe, or approval. All right then. She turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. There's going to be a town meeting next week, at the church, about you two. Elias's jaw tightened. Let me guess. Greer's idea. And Barlow's. Ruth's face darkened. They're stirring people up, calling it a moral issue, saying it's not right for an unmarried man and woman to live together, especially someone with your history. My history, Elias repeated, voice flat. I'm just telling you what they're saying. You deserve to know. What do they want? I don't know yet, but it won't be good. She looked at Lydia. You should both be careful. We are, Lydia said quietly. Ruth nodded and climbed onto her horse. She rode off without another word. Lydia watched her go, then turned to Elias. A town meeting? That sounds bad. Yeah. What do you think they'll do? Try to run you out, or make me marry you, or both. She went pale. They can't do that. They can try. And if they do? He met her eyes. Then we figure it out. She didn't look convinced. A check. That night, Lydia barely touched her food. Elias noticed but didn't push. He cleaned up, banked the fire, and was heading outside to check on dust when she spoke. Elias. He stopped, turned. She was standing near the table, hands clenched together. I can't let you do this. Do what? Ruin your life for me. He frowned. That's not what's happening. It is. Her voice shook. You were fine before I showed up. You had your land, you're quiet, and now people are talking, and there's going to be a meeting, and they're going to... Lydia. He stepped closer. I was never fine. I was just existing. There's a difference. That doesn't mean you should... I'm not a saint, he interrupted. I'm not doing this because I'm noble or good. I'm doing it because it feels like the first real choice I've made in years. She stared at him. I don't understand. I spent 5 years hiding out here because I was afraid of what I'd done. Afraid of who I was. And then you showed up, and I had a chance to do something that wasn't about fear, so I did. But now you're going to pay for it. Maybe, he shrugged. Or maybe I won't. Either way, it's my choice. You don't owe me anything, she whispered. I know. Then why? Because no one else was going to help you, he said simply, and I couldn't walk away from that. She looked at him for a long time, eyes shining. Then she said, You're a better man than you think you are. He didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't say anything. He just nodded and went outside. Go. Monday came, and Lydia left for town before sunrise. Elias offered to take her in the wagon, but she refused. "It's only 3 miles," she said. "I can walk." "It's cold." "I'll be fine." He didn't argue, just handed her a canteen and a piece of bread wrapped in cloth. "Be careful," he said. She smiled faintly. "You too." And then she was gone, a small figure walking into the gray morning light. Elias watched until she disappeared over the first rise, then went back inside. The cabin felt too empty. He threw himself into work, fixing the roof, mending harnesses, chopping wood until his shoulders burned, anything to keep his mind occupied. But the unease didn't leave. By the time Lydia came back that evening, he was pacing. She stepped inside, tired but unhurt, and he felt something in his chest unclench. "How was it?" he asked. "Fine." She set down a small bundle. "Ruth's kind. The work's hard, but it's honest. And she fed me lunch. Anyone give you trouble?" A few stares, but no one said anything. He nodded, relieved. She looked at him, tilting her head. "Were you worried?" "No." "Liar." He almost smiled. She moved to the stove and started heating water for tea. "Ruth says the meeting's this Saturday. She thinks half the town will show up." "Probably." "Are we going?" "Don't know yet." She turned, frowning. "We have to go. If we don't, they'll just make up their minds without us." "They've already made up their minds." "Then we change them." He shook his head. "You can't change people like that." "Maybe not. But we can at least make them look us in the eye when they judge us." He studied her. There was a fire in her voice that hadn't been there before, something fierce. "All right," he said. "We'll go." She nodded, satisfied. The days leading up to the meeting crawled by. Lydia kept working at the boarding house. Elias kept to the land. They settled into an uneasy rhythm, waiting for Saturday like a storm on the horizon. On Thursday night, something changed. They were sitting at the table after supper, Lydia mending a shirt, Elias sharpening a knife, when she suddenly said, "Tell me about them." He looked up. "Who?" "The men you killed." He went still. "You don't have to," she added quickly. "But I keep thinking about it, and I want to understand." He set down the knife, stared at his hands. "There were 3 of them," he said finally. "Brothers. They called themselves the Dorsey Gang, but that was a joke. They were just thieves, desperate ones." "What did they do?" "Robbed a payroll wagon outside of town, shot the driver in the back." He had a wife and 2 kids. Lydia's hands stilled on the fabric. "I tracked them into the hills," Elias continued, voice flat. "Found them camped near a creek. I called out, told them to drop their guns and come in peaceful. They laughed." "What happened?" "The oldest one drew first. I shot him. The second one tried to run. I shot him too. The third—" He stopped, jaw tight. "The third one was just a kid, maybe 17. He dropped his gun and put his hands up." Lydia's breath caught. "I could have brought him in," Elias said quietly. "Should have, but I was angry. The driver had been a friend, and I pulled the trigger." Silence filled the cabin. "He was surrendering," Lydia said softly. "Yeah." "And you still shot him?" "Yeah." She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she said, "Do you regret it?" "Every day." "But you don't think you're evil?" He looked at her, surprised. "What? You said you're not a good man, but you don't think you're evil either, do you?" He hesitated. "I don't know what I am." "You're someone who made a mistake," she said. "A terrible one. But you're also someone who's trying to do better." "Trying doesn't undo what I did." "No, but it means something." She leaned forward. "You could have kept being a lawman, could have buried it and moved on, but you didn't. You left because you knew it was wrong. That counts for something." He didn't know what to say. She picked up the shirt again, fingers moving over the fabric. "I've done things I'm not proud of, too." "Like what?" "I lied to Barlow. But that's not the worst of it." She didn't look at him. "Before my father died, he was sick for months. I was supposed to take care of him, but some days I was so tired, so angry, that I'd leave him alone longer than I should have. I'd go for walks just to get away from him. And then he died. And her voice broke. I don't know if I did enough, if I could have saved him, if I'd been better. Elias shook his head. You were exhausted. That's not the same as... It feels the same. She looked at him, tears in her eyes. It feels like I failed him. You didn't. How do you know? Because you're still carrying it. If you didn't care, you wouldn't. She wiped her eyes, laughing softly. That's a low bar. Maybe, but it's something. They sat in silence, the weight of their confessions hanging between them. Then Lydia said, We're a mess, aren't we? Yeah, Elias said. We are. But we're trying. Yeah. She smiled, small and sad. Maybe that's enough. He didn't know if it was, but he wanted to believe it. Saturday came too fast. They rode into town together, the wagon creaking over the rutted road. The church sat at the far end of the main street, its white paint peeling, its bell tower crooked. People were already gathering outside. Elias pulled the wagon to a stop, and they climbed down. Eyes turned toward them immediately. Whispers started. Lydia's hand found his arm just for a second, and then she let go. Ready? He asked. No, she said, but let's go anyway. They walked toward the church together. The crowd parted, reluctant, and they stepped inside. The interior was packed. Every pew filled, people standing along the walls. At the front, near the pulpit, stood Thomas Greer and Samuel Barlow. Greer's face was tight with disapproval. Barlow's was smug. Elias and Lydia made their way to an empty spot near the back. Ruth Kane was there, sitting alone. She nodded at them, grim but steady. Greer stepped forward and raised his hands. Let us begin. The room fell silent. We are gathered here today, Greer said, his voice high and reedy, to address a matter of great moral concern. It has come to our attention that Mr. Elias Crow has taken a young woman into his home, unmarried, and that they are living together in a manner that is... We're not doing anything wrong, Lydia said loudly. The room gasped. Greer's face turned red. You will wait your turn to speak. Why? So you can twist everything before I get a chance to defend myself? Miss Hale, she's right, Ruth said, standing. You've already decided they're guilty. This isn't a meeting, it's a trial. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Barlow stepped forward, smiling coldly. No one's on trial. We're simply concerned for Miss Hale's well-being and for the reputation of this town. You're not concerned about me, Lydia shot back. You're angry because I embarrassed you. You lied to me, and you humiliated me in front of everyone. Her voice shook with anger. You didn't care about my well-being then. Why do you care now? Barlow's smile faltered. Greer jumped in. Regardless of what happened at the depot, the fact remains that you are living with Mr. Crow in sin. That is unacceptable. We're not living in sin, Lydia said. We're barely living together. He sleeps on the floor. I sleep in the bed. We don't... She stopped, flushed. We're not doing what you think we're doing. Then marry him, someone shouted from the crowd. Lydia went pale. Elias spoke for the first time. She's not marrying anyone she doesn't want to marry. Greer pointed at him. Then you are corrupting her, leading her into temptation. I'm giving her a place to stay, Elias said flatly. That's all. For how long? Barlow demanded. How long do you expect people to believe this is innocent? I don't care what people believe. Well, we do. Greer's voice rose. This town has standards, morals, and we will not allow them to be degraded by... By what? Ruth interrupted. By kindness? By someone helping a woman who had nowhere else to go? By scandal, Greer snapped. The only scandal here, Ruth said, is that you're all so eager to tear them down instead of helping them. The room erupted in arguments, people shouting, talking over each other. Elias felt Lydia's hand slip into his, trembling. He squeezed it, steady. Greer banged his hand on the pulpit. Enough! We will put this to a vote. All in favor of demanding that Mr. Crow and Miss Hale either marry or separate, say aye. A chorus of ayes filled the room. All opposed? Ruth's voice rang out. Nay. A few others joined her, but not many. Greer smiled, thin and triumphant. The motion carries. You have 1 week to decide. Either marry or Miss Hale must leave. Lydia's hand tightened around Elias's. He looked at Greer, at Barlow. at the crowd of faces, some smug, some uncomfortable, some just watching. And he made a choice. No, he said. The room went silent. What? Greer blinked. No, Elias repeated. You don't get to make that demand. This town has every right. This town has no right to tell me what to do on my own land. His voice was low, hard. You want to judge us? Fine. Judge all you want. But you don't get to force us into anything. Barlow stepped forward. You can't just, I can, and I will. Elias looked at Lydia. If you want to leave, I'll take you anywhere you want to go. But if you want to stay, you stay. No one's going to force you out. She stared at him, eyes wide. Then she turned to the crowd. I'm staying. Greer's face went purple. This is outrageous. Then don't come to my land, Elias said. Don't talk to us, don't look at us, but you don't get to control us. He took Lydia's hand and walked out. The room exploded behind them, voices shouting, but Elias didn't stop. They climbed onto the wagon and rode out of town without looking back. They didn't speak until they were halfway home. Then Lydia said, voice shaking, You just made a lot of enemies. I know. They could make things very difficult for us. I know. And you did it anyway. Yeah. She looked at him, something unreadable in her eyes. Why? Because it was right. It's the only reason I've got, he said. And it's enough for me. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Thank you. He nodded. They rode the rest of the way in silence. When they got to the cabin, the sun was setting, painting the sky in deep purples and reds. Lydia climbed down from the wagon and stood there, looking at the small, lonely house. What do we do now? She asked. Elias looked at her, at the woman who'd been thrown away by one man and defended by another, at the fire in her eyes and the fear she was trying to hide. We keep going, he said. She nodded slowly, and together they walked inside. The cabin door closed behind them, and for a moment neither of them moved. Lydia set her shawl on the table, hands shaking. Elias stood near the stove, watching her. Are you all right? He asked. She laughed, sharp and bitter. No, not even close. Fair enough. She turned to him, eyes blazing. You didn't have to do that, stand up to them like that. You could have just what? Let them bully you into leaving? Yes, her voice cracked. It would have been easier for you. I don't care about easier. You should. She wiped her eyes angrily. You should care. Because now they're going to make your life hell, and it's my fault. It's not your fault. Then whose is it? She threw her hands up. I'm the one who lied. I'm the one who showed up here with nothing. I'm the one who… Lydia. He stepped closer. Stop. Stop what? Blaming yourself for other people being cruel. She stared at him, breathing hard. Then she sank into a chair and put her face in her hands. Elias stood there, helpless. He'd never been good at this part. Comfort, words. He could fix a fence, build a fire, shoot straight. But this? He pulled out the other chair and sat across from her. I meant what I said, he told her. You want to leave? I'll take you. Tomorrow, if you want. Put you on a train to anywhere. She looked up, eyes red. And if I don't want to leave? Then you stay. And we just keep going? Pretend the whole town doesn't hate us? They don't all hate us. Ruth doesn't. Ruth's one person. One's better than none. She almost smiled at that. Almost. What happens when they come back? She asked quietly. Because they will. Barlow won't let this go. Then we deal with it when it happens. That's not a plan, Elias. It's the only one I've got. She shook her head, but some of the tension left her shoulders. You're impossible. Yeah, I've heard that before. This time she did smile, small and tired. They sat in silence for a while, the stove ticking as it cooled. Then Lydia said, I need to tell you something. Elias waited. When I was with my father, she said slowly, toward the end, he got mean. The sickness made him angry, and he'd say things, terrible things. He told me I was worthless, that I'd never amount to anything, that no man would ever want me. Elias's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. I told myself he didn't mean it, she continued, That it was just the pain talking, but part of me believed him, and when I wrote to Barlow, I thought, maybe if I could just be good enough, useful enough, someone would want me, even if I had to lie to make it happen. You don't have to be useful to be wanted, Elias said quietly. She looked at him. Don't I? No? Then why do you want me here? He thought about that, really thought about it. Because you're stubborn, he said finally, and you don't give up. And when the whole world's kicking you, you get back up and keep going. That's worth something. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time she was smiling. You're not what I expected, she said. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone harder, colder. I am hard. And cold. No, you're not. She wiped her eyes. You're just hurt. There's a difference. He didn't know what to say to that, so he stood and moved to the stove. You eaten? Not since breakfast. Then I'll make something. I can sit, he said firmly. You've done enough today. She sat. He cooked in silence, the familiar rhythm of it steadying him. Beans and cornbread, nothing fancy. But it was hot and filling, and when he set the plate in front of her, she ate like she hadn't seen food in days. Halfway through, she stopped and looked at him. Elias? Yeah? Thank you for everything. He nodded. You're welcome. They finished eating, cleaned up together, and settled in for the night. But sleep didn't come easy for either of them. Cham. The next week crawled by like an injured animal. Lydia kept working at the boarding house, though Ruth warned her that some of the regulars were starting to complain. Not to Lydia's face, but in whispers. Enough that Ruth heard them. They're saying I shouldn't employ you, Ruth told her on Wednesday, voice tight with anger, that it's improper. Lydia's stomach dropped. Are you going to let me go? Hell no, Ruth's eyes flashed. But I wanted you to know what you're up against. I appreciate that. Ruth softened. How are things out at the cabin? Quiet. Too quiet. Crow treating you right? Better than I deserve. Ruth studied her. You care about him. It wasn't a question. Lydia looked away. He's a good man. That's not what I asked. Lydia didn't answer. Ruth sighed. Just be careful. People are watching you two like hawks. One wrong move and they'll pounce. We're not doing anything wrong. I know, but that won't stop them. Back at the cabin, Elias was dealing with his own problems. Someone had cut his fence line. Not badly, just enough to let dust wander off. He'd spent half the morning tracking her down and the other half repairing the damage. It wasn't an accident. The cuts were too clean, too deliberate. He didn't tell Lydia when she got home that evening. Didn't want to worry her more than she already was. But 2 days later, it happened again. This time, they also broke into his shed and smashed his tools. Hammers, saws, anything they could reach. Elias stood in the wreckage, hands clenched into fists, breathing hard. He could guess who was behind it. Barlow. Or someone Barlow paid. He thought about riding into town, confronting him, but that would just give them what they wanted. An excuse to escalate. So he cleaned up the mess, replaced what he could, and kept his mouth shut. But when Lydia came home and saw his bruised knuckles from gripping the hammer too hard while he worked, she knew something was wrong. What happened? She asked. Nothing. Elias, he sighed. Someone's been messing with the property, cut the fence, broke some tools. Her face went pale. When? Yesterday, and a few days before that. Why didn't you tell me? Didn't want you to worry. Well, I'm worrying now. She paced, agitated. This is getting worse. They're not going to stop. I know. So what do we do? Keep going. She spun on him. That's your answer to everything. It's the only answer I've got. It's not enough. Then what do you want me to do? His voice rose, frustration bleeding through. Go to town and start a fight? Give them exactly what they want? They're trying to provoke me, Lydia. I'm not going to give them the satisfaction. She stared at him, breathing hard. Then her shoulders sagged. I hate this, she whispered. Yeah, me too. She crossed the room and sat at the table, head in her hands. Elias watched her for a moment, then sat across from her. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For dragging you into this. She looked up. You didn't drag me into anything. I chose to stay. You shouldn't have had to make that choice. Maybe not, but I did, and I don't regret it. He frowned. You should. Well, I don't. She reached across the table and took his hand. You've been kinder to me than anyone in my life. I'm not going to abandon you just because things got hard. He stared at their joined hands, rough and calloused on both sides. You're stubborn, he said. So are you. Yeah. They sat like that for a while, the silence heavy but not unkind. Then Lydia said, What if we did it? Elias looked up. Did what? Got married. His heart stopped. Not because they're forcing us, she added quickly, but because it would solve the problem. They couldn't say anything if we were married. Lydia, I know it's not ideal. I know you don't. I mean, we barely know each other, but it would stop the talk, and it would protect both of us. Elias pulled his hand back. That's not a reason to get married. Then what is? I don't know, but not that. She looked hurt. Why not? Because you deserve better. Better than what? Than a marriage that's just for show. Than settling for someone because you don't have other options. And what if I'm not settling? Her voice shook. What if I actually want to? He stared at her. You don't mean that. How do you know what I mean? Because you're scared and desperate, and you're trying to fix a problem that shouldn't exist in the first place. Maybe. She stood, agitated. Or maybe I've spent my whole life waiting for something better, and I'm tired of waiting. Maybe I'd rather build something real with someone who actually gives a damn about me than keep hoping for some perfect person who doesn't exist. Elias stood too. I'm not perfect. I know that. I don't care. You should. Why? She stepped closer. Why should I care that you've made mistakes? Everyone makes mistakes. The difference is you actually feel bad about yours. That doesn't change what I've done. No, but it changes who you are now. He wanted to argue, wanted to push her away, but the look in her eyes stopped him. Lydia, he said quietly, I can't give you what you're asking for. I'm not asking for anything except honesty. Do you want me here or not? That's not the question. It's the only question. He turned away, jaw tight. Of course I want you here. Then why won't you? Because I'm afraid, he snapped, turning back to her. All right? I'm afraid that if we do this, it'll be for the wrong reasons, and you'll end up hating me for it, and I'd rather lose you now than watch that happen. Lydia went still. Then she said, voice soft, You're not going to lose me. You don't know that. Neither do you. They stood there, breathing hard, the air between them charged with something neither of them knew how to name. Then Lydia said, I'm not asking you to marry me right now. I'm saying it's an option, if we decide we want it to be. Elias looked at her, really looked at her, at the woman who'd been thrown away and chose to stay anyway, at the fire in her eyes and the fear she refused to let win. All right, he said finally, we'll think about it. She nodded. Okay. They didn't talk about it again that night, but the idea hung between them like smoke. 3 days later, everything changed. Elias was out mending the fence again when he heard hooves. He straightened, hand moving toward the rifle propped against a post. But it wasn't Barlow. It was a man he didn't recognize. Young, maybe 25, with a deputy's badge pinned to his vest. Mr. Crow? The man called out. Elias didn't answer. The deputy dismounted, hands visible, non-threatening. I'm Deputy Marshal Hewitt. I need to talk to you. About what? Samuel Barlow filed a complaint, says you threatened him. Elias's jaw tightened. I didn't threaten anyone. That's not what he says. He claims you told him you'd kill him if he came onto your property. I told him he wouldn't leave if he tried. That's not a threat. That's a fact. Hewitt's expression didn't change. Mr. Crow, I'm not here to arrest you. I'm here to warn you. Barlow's stirring up trouble, and if you give him an excuse, he'll use it. Keep your head down. Don't give him ammunition. He's the one cutting my fences and breaking my tools. Can you prove that? No. Then it didn't happen. Hewitt's voice was flat. Look, I don't like Barlow any more than you do, but he's got money and friends. You don't. If this escalates, you'll lose, so don't let it escalate. Elias stared at him. That's your advice? Roll over? My advice is to be smart. Hewitt climbed back onto his horse. And maybe consider that marriage the town's pushing for. It'd solve a lot of problems. Or create new ones. Hewitt shrugged. Your call. Just don't say I didn't warn you. He rode off, leaving Elias standing there, anger simmering under his skin. When Lydia got home that evening, he told her what happened. She listened, face tight, then said, "They're closing in." "Yeah." "We're running out of time." "Yeah." She looked at him. "So what do we do?" Elias thought about it, about the deputy's warning, about the broken tools and cut fences, about the town that wanted them gone or married or anything except what they were. And he thought about Lydia, about the way she looked at him, about the fire in her voice when she said she wasn't settling. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But we'll figure it out." She nodded, but he could see the fear in her eyes. That night, the storm hit. It came out of nowhere, clouds rolling in fast and black, wind howling across the prairie like something alive. Rain slammed against the cabin, so hard it sounded like gravel. Lydia stood near the window, watching the lightning crack across the sky. "You ever seen a storm like this?" she asked. "Few times." Elias banked the fire higher. "We'll be fine, cabin's sturdy." "That's not what I'm worried about." He looked at her. "What are you worried about?" She turned, and in the flickering firelight, he could see tears on her face. "Everything," she whispered. "I'm worried about everything." He crossed the room and stood in front of her. "Talk to me," he said. "I'm scared, Elias. I'm scared that they're going to force me to leave. I'm scared that they're going to hurt you. I'm scared that I made a terrible mistake coming here and I've ruined both our lives." "You didn't ruin anything." "How do you know?" "Because my life was already ruined. You just gave me a reason to care about it again." She stared at him, lips trembling. "I don't know how to do this," she said. "I don't know how to be brave." "You're the bravest person I know." "I'm not. I'm terrified." "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you keep going anyway." She laughed, broken and wet. "Is that what we're doing? Keeping going?" "Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing." The storm raged outside, shaking the cabin, but inside it was warm and steady. Lydia looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "I need to tell you the truth." "About what?" "About why I really want to stay." Elias waited. "It's not just because I have nowhere else to go," she said. "It's because when I'm here with you, I don't feel worthless. I don't feel like a burden. I feel seen, like I matter." His throat tightened. "You do matter," he said. "I know, because of you." She stepped closer. "And I know it's fast and I know it's crazy, but I don't care. I'd rather have this, whatever this is, than go back to being alone." Elias's hands were shaking. He didn't know when that started. "Lydia," he said carefully, "if we do this, if we get married, it can't be because we're scared. It has to be because we want it, really want it. I do want it." "How do you know?" "Because I've never felt safer than I do right now, and I've never wanted to fight for something the way I want to fight for this." He looked at her, at the woman who'd walked off a train with nothing and chose to stay when staying was the hardest thing she could do, and he realized something. He wanted to fight for it too. "All right," he said. She blinked. "All right, what?" "All right, let's do it. Let's get married." Her eyes went wide. "Are you serious?" "Yeah, if you are." "I am." Her voice shook. "I'm serious." "Then we'll do it." She laughed, a sound caught between joy and disbelief. "When?" "Tomorrow, before anyone can talk us out of it." "Tomorrow," she repeated, like she was testing the word. "If you want." "I want." She grabbed his hands. "I want." He smiled. Actually smiled. "Okay then." The storm howled outside, battering the cabin with wind and rain. But inside, for the first time in a long time, Elias felt something that wasn't fear or guilt or anger. He felt hope. Morning came gray and cold. The storm spent. Elias woke to find Lydia already up, pacing near the stove. "Second thoughts?" he asked. She turned. "No, just nervous." "Me too." She smiled at that. "Good. I'd be worried if you weren't." He stood and moved to the stove, starting coffee. "We'll ride into town, find whoever can marry us, get it done." "Just like that?" "Just like that." She nodded, hands twisting together. "What if they refuse?" "Then we find someone else." "And if no one will?" "Then we do it ourselves." She stared at him. You can't marry yourself. We can say the words, that's what matters. She laughed, shaky but real. You're insane. Probably. They drank coffee in silence, both of them too wired to eat. Then Elias said, You sure about this? Are you? I asked you first. She looked at him, eyes serious. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He nodded. Then let's go. They climbed onto the wagon and rode into town, the morning air sharp and clean after the storm. Millhaven looked the same as always, quiet, mean, unforgiving. Elias pulled the wagon up outside the church and they climbed down. Greer was inside, sweeping the floor. He looked up when they entered and his face went tight. Mr. Crow, Miss Hale, what are you doing here? We want to get married, Elias said. Greer blinked. What? You heard me? Now? Right now. Greer set down the broom, looking between them. This is highly irregular. There are procedures, bans to be posted, witnesses. We don't care about procedures, Lydia said. We just want it done. Greer's eyes narrowed. Why the sudden urgency? Because it's what we want, Elias said flatly. Are you going to do it or not? Greer hesitated. Elias could see the wheels turning. The man wanted this, wanted them married, but he also didn't want to make it easy. Finally, Greer said, I'll do it, but I need witnesses, at least 2. Then find them. Greer's mouth thinned, but he nodded. Wait here. He left, and Elias and Lydia stood in the empty church, the silence pressing down on them. You okay? Elias asked. Lydia nodded. Yeah. You? Yeah. She took his hand. Whatever happens, I'm glad we're doing this. He squeezed her hand. Me too. Greer returned with 2 people, Ruth Kane and an older man Elias didn't recognize. Ruth looked surprised, but pleased. The old man just looked confused. Mr. Crow, Miss Hale, Greer said stiffly, if you'll stand here. They moved to the front of the church. Ruth and the old man stood off to the side. Greer opened his book and began. The words washed over Elias. He barely heard them. He was too focused on Lydia's hand in his, warm and steady. When Greer asked if he took her as his wife, Elias said, I do. When he asked Lydia the same, she said, I do, voice clear and strong. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Greer snapped the book shut, looking vaguely annoyed. Ruth smiled. Elias looked at Lydia. She looked back, and just like that they were married. They stood there in the quiet church, married, and Elias didn't know what he was supposed to feel. Relief, maybe. Or fear. Or something in between. What he felt was numb. Ruth stepped forward and hugged Lydia, whispering something in her ear that made Lydia's eyes shine. The old man shuffled over and shook Elias's hand, muttering congratulations. Greer stood stiff and disapproving near the pulpit, arms crossed. I'll file the certificate with the county, he said coldly. You're legally bound now. I hope you understand what that means. We do, Lydia said, voice steady. Greer's mouth tightened. Then may you find what you're looking for. It didn't sound like a blessing. Elias took Lydia's arm, and they walked out together, Ruth following behind. Outside, the sun had broken through the clouds, washing the street in pale gold light. A few people were out, going about their business. They stopped and stared when they saw Elias and Lydia emerge from the church. The whispers started immediately. Did they just married already? Ruth ignored them all. She pulled Lydia into another hug. You did the right thing, she said quietly. Both of you. I hope so, Lydia murmured. I know so. Ruth stepped back and looked at Elias. You take care of her. I will. And you, Ruth said, turning to Lydia, take care of him. He needs it more than he knows. Lydia nodded, eyes glistening. Ruth squeezed her hand once more, then headed back toward the boarding house. Elias and Lydia stood on the church steps, alone together for the first time as husband and wife. Well, Lydia said, we did it. Yeah. No going back now. No. She looked at him, searching his face. Are you all right? I don't know, he said honestly. Ask me tomorrow. She smiled faintly. Fair enough. They climbed onto the wagon and started home. The ride was quiet. Neither of them knew what to say. The weight of what they'd just done hung between them, too big to name. When the cabin came into view, Lydia let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "Home," she said softly. Elias looked at her. "Yeah, home." They climbed down and went inside. The cabin looked the same as it always had, small, sparse, functional. But something felt different now, like the air had shifted. Lydia set her shawl on the table and turned to face him. "So," she said, "what now?" Elias took off his hat and hung it on the peg. "I don't know. I've never been married before. Neither have I." They stared at each other. Then Lydia laughed, sudden and bright. "This is ridiculous. We're acting like strangers." "We kind of are." "No, we're not. We've been living together for weeks." "That was different." "How?" "Because now it's—" He trailed off, not sure how to finish. "Official?" she offered. "Yeah." She stepped closer. "Does that scare you?" "A little." "Me too." They stood there inches apart, the silence stretching. Then Lydia said, "I'm not expecting anything from you tonight, if that's what you're worried about." Elias felt his face heat. I know, I just wanted to say it. So we're clear." "We're clear." She nodded. "Good. Then let's just be normal, like we were before." "All right." But it wasn't normal, not really. They moved around each other too carefully, too aware. Every touch, every glance felt weighted with meaning. They made dinner together, ate in near silence, cleaned up. When night fell, Lydia looked at the bed, then at Elias. "You're not sleeping on the floor anymore," she said firmly. "Lydia, we're married. It's your bed, our bed, whatever. The point is you're not sleeping on the floor." "Where am I supposed to sleep?" "In the bed, with me." His heart kicked hard against his ribs. "I don't think that's—" "Nothing's going to happen," she interrupted. "We'll just sleep, that's all." He wanted to argue, wanted to say it was a bad idea. But the truth was, his back hurt from weeks on the hard floor, and he was tired of pretending he didn't want to be near her. "All right," he said. They changed into nightclothes on opposite sides of the room, backs turned. Then they climbed into bed, lying stiff and awkward on their respective sides, a careful distance between them. The cabin was dark, quiet. The wind whispered through the cracks in the walls. Elias stared at the ceiling, hyper-aware of every breath Lydia took. "Elias?" she said after a while. "Yeah?" "Thank you. For today. For everything. You don't have to thank me." "I know, but I want to." He turned his head to look at her. She was already looking at him, eyes reflecting the faint moonlight through the window. "I meant what I said," he told her, "about wanting this. It wasn't just to solve a problem." "I know. Do you?" "Yes." She shifted closer just slightly. "Because I feel the same way." His hand found hers in the dark, their fingers laced together, rough and warm. "Good night, Lydia." "Good night, Elias." They fell asleep like that, holding hands in the dark. The next morning, Elias woke to the smell of coffee. Lydia was already up, dressed, moving around the cabin with quiet efficiency. She looked over when she heard him stir and smiled. "Morning?" "Morning." He sat up, disoriented. He'd slept better than he had in years. She handed him a cup of coffee. "I thought I'd head into town early today. Ruth mentioned she might need extra help. You want me to come with you?" "No, I'll be fine. Besides, you've got work to do here." He frowned. "I don't like you going alone." "I'll be careful." "Lydia." "Elias." She set down her cup and looked at him. "I can't live in fear. If we're going to make this work, I need to be able to move freely. I can't hide out here forever." He wanted to argue, but she was right. "Fine," he said, "but if anyone gives you trouble, I'll handle it. I mean it. If Barlow or anyone else—" "I know." She kissed his forehead, quick and light, then grabbed her shawl. "I'll be back before dark." And she was gone, leaving Elias standing there, coffee in hand, feeling off balance. He threw himself into work to distract himself, fix the broken tools, reinforce the fence, check the garden, but his mind kept drifting back to her, to the way she'd smiled this morning, to the feel of her hand in his last night, He was so lost in thought that he almost didn't hear the riders approach. But then Dust whinnied, sharp and nervous, and Elias looked up. 3 men on horseback, coming fast. He recognized one of them immediately. Barlow. Elias set down his tools and walked toward the house, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. He reached the door, grabbed the rifle from above the frame, and stepped back outside. The riders pulled to a stop 20 feet from the cabin. Barlow sat in the middle, flanked by 2 men Elias didn't know. Hired muscle, probably. Big, hard-faced men with guns on their hips. "Crow," Barlow said, grinning. "Heard you got married. Congratulations." Elias didn't answer. Barlow's grin widened. "Of course, I also heard you did it pretty quick. Almost like you were desperate. State your business or leave." "My business?" Barlow leaned forward in his saddle. "My business is making sure you understand something. Just because you married that girl doesn't mean this is over." "There's nothing to be over. She's my wife now. That's the end of it." "Is it?" Barlow's eyes glittered. "See, I don't think it is. I think you took something that didn't belong to you, and I don't like being made a fool of." "You made yourself a fool? I just gave her a way out." One of the hired men shifted, hand moving toward his gun. Elias leveled the rifle. "Don't." The man froze. Barlow laughed. "Easy, Crow. We're not here to start a fight. Just wanted to pay our respects, offer some advice." "I don't need your advice." "Sure you do. See, marriages out here, they're fragile. People die. Accidents happen, fires, floods. Sometimes a man just disappears." Elias's grip tightened on the rifle. "You threatening me?" "Just stating facts." Barlow straightened in his saddle. "You watch yourself, Crow. And you watch that wife of yours. Wouldn't want anything to happen to her." Rage flared hot and sharp in Elias's chest, but he kept his voice level. "If you touch her—" "You'll what?" Barlow interrupted. "Kill me? Like you killed those men up north? That worked out real well for you, didn't it?" Elias said nothing. Barlow turned his horse. "Come on, boys. We've said our piece." They rode off, kicking up dust. Elias stood there, rifle still raised, heart pounding. When they were out of sight, he lowered the gun and went inside. His hands were shaking. He set the rifle down and gripped the edge of the table, breathing hard. Barlow had just threatened Lydia. Not directly, but close enough. Elias wanted to ride after him, wanted to drag him off that horse and make him take it back. But that was exactly what Barlow wanted. An excuse to escalate. An excuse to bring the law down on Elias. So he stayed put, and he waited. When Lydia came home that evening, she knew something was wrong the moment she saw his face. "What happened?" she asked, setting down her bag. "Barlow was here." Her face went pale. "What did he want?" "To remind me that he's not done." Elias told her everything, the veiled threats, the hired men, the implication that something might happen to her. Lydia sank into a chair, hands trembling. "He's not going to stop." "No, he's not." "So what do we do?" Elias sat across from her. "We stay alert. We don't go anywhere alone. And we don't give him an opening." "That's not a plan, Elias. That's just waiting for him to make the first move." "What else can we do?" "I don't know." Her voice cracked. "But I'm scared." "Me too." She looked at him, eyes red. "I thought getting married would fix this. Make it stop." "So did I." "But it didn't." "No." She covered her face with her hands. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I brought this into your life." "Stop." He reached across the table and pulled her hands down. "This isn't your fault. Barlow's the one doing this, not you. But if I hadn't come here, then I'd still be alone and you'd be somewhere worse. I don't regret this, Lydia. Not for a second." She stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "How can you say that? He's going to hurt us." "Maybe. But we'll face it together." She laughed, broken and bitter. "Together. Like that makes a difference." "It does to me." She closed her eyes, shoulders shaking. Elias stood and moved around the table. He pulled her to her feet and wrapped his arms around her, holding her while she cried. "We're going to be okay," he said quietly. "You don't know that." "No, but I believe it." She clung to him, face buried in his chest. And for a moment, in the warmth of the cabin, they let themselves believe it too. The next few days were tense. Elias didn't let Lydia go to town alone. He drove her to the boarding house each morning and picked her up each evening. Ruth noticed but didn't comment. At night, they locked the doors and kept the rifle close. They didn't talk much. The fear had settled over them like a heavy blanket, smothering conversation. But they held each other at night, and that was enough. On the fourth day, Ruth pulled Lydia aside at the boarding house. "You need to leave," Ruth said bluntly. Lydia blinked. "What?" "You and Crow. You need to leave town. Go somewhere Barlow can't reach you. We can't just leave. This is our home. Home won't matter if you're dead." Lydia's stomach twisted. "Has he said something?" "Not directly, but I hear things. He's been drinking more, talking more, getting meaner. He's working himself up to something, Lydia, and when he finally snaps, you don't want to be here." "We can't run." "Why not?" "Because it's not right. We didn't do anything wrong." "That doesn't matter." Ruth's voice was hard. "What matters is survival. And right now, staying here is dangerous." Lydia shook her head. "Elias won't leave. This land is all he has." "Then convince him." "I can't. You have to try." But when Lydia brought it up that night, Elias's answer was immediate. "No." "Elias, no, I'm not running." "Ruth thinks—" "I don't care what Ruth thinks. This is my land. I'm not letting Barlow drive me off it." "Even if it means getting killed?" "Even then." She stared at him, frustration and fear warring in her chest. "That's stupid." "Maybe, but it's my choice. It's our choice now. We're married, remember? What affects you affects me. Then stay if you want, leave if you want. But I'm not running." She wanted to scream, wanted to shake him, but she knew it wouldn't do any good. So she just said, "Fine, then we stay." "Fine." They went to bed angry that night, lying on opposite sides of the mattress, backs turned. But somewhere in the dark, Elias's hand found hers, and she didn't pull away. The breaking point came a week later. Elias was out checking the fence line when he saw smoke. Black, thick smoke rising from the direction of the cabin. His heart stopped. He ran. By the time he got there, flames were already licking up the side of the shed. The door was open, and he could see someone inside, Lydia, dragging out tools, coughing. "Lydia!" he shouted. She turned, face streaked with soot. "I'm trying to save what I can—" "Get out of there!" She grabbed one more hammer and stumbled out just as part of the roof collapsed. Elias pulled her away from the flames, checking her over frantically. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine. I was inside when I smelled smoke. By the time I got out here, it was already burning." "Did you see anyone?" "No. But this wasn't an accident, Elias. Someone set this." He looked at the fire, rage building in his chest. They spent the next hour trying to put it out, hauling water from the well, throwing dirt. By the time they got it under control, the shed was gone. Just a charred skeleton. Lydia sat on the ground, exhausted and filthy, staring at the wreckage. Elias stood beside her, fists clenched. "He did this," Lydia said quietly. "Yeah. And he's going to keep doing it until we're gone. Or dead." Elias didn't answer. She looked up at him. "We have to do something." "Like what?" "I don't know. But we can't just sit here and wait for him to burn down the whole cabin next time." Elias's jaw tightened. "You want me to go after him. I want you to stop him. And how do you suggest I do that?" "However you have to." He stared at her. "You know what you're asking me to do." "Yes." "And you're okay with it?" She stood, shaking. "No, I'm not okay with it. But I'm less okay with dying or watching you die. So if stopping him means—" "I can't," Elias interrupted. "I can't go down that road again." "Then what do we do?" "I don't know." She looked at him, eyes blazing. "Then figure it out. Because I'm not losing you. Not to him. Not to anyone." Her words hit him like a punch to the chest. She wasn't just scared. She was fighting. For him. For them. And he realized he was tired of being afraid. "All right," he said. "All right what?" "We fight back." She blinked. "How?" "We go to town tomorrow. We make a public complaint. We get witnesses. We make sure everyone knows what Barlow's doing." "You think that'll stop him?" "No. But it'll make it harder for him to keep doing it without consequences." She nodded slowly. "Okay. We try it your way. And if it doesn't work, then we try mine." He looked at her, this woman who'd been thrown away and chose to stay, who'd been terrified and chose to fight. And he realized something. He loved her. The thought hit him so suddenly, so completely, that he almost said it out loud. But he didn't. Not yet. Instead, he took her hand and said, "Let's go inside. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." She nodded, exhausted. They went inside, washed the soot off their faces, and collapsed into bed. Lydia curled into his side, head on his chest, and he wrapped his arms around her. "We're going to get through this," he said. "Promise?" "Promise." She closed her eyes. "I'm holding you to that." "Good." They fell asleep like that, holding each other in the dark. And for the first time in days, Elias felt like maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. Morning came too soon. They dressed in silence, the weight of what they were about to do hanging over them. Elias loaded the rifle and tucked it under the wagon seat, just in case. They rode into town, and this time, people stared openly. The burned shed was already gossip. Everyone knew. Elias pulled up outside the deputy marshal's office. Hewitt was inside, feet up on his desk, reading a newspaper. He looked up when they entered inside. "Let me guess. Barlow." "He burned my shed," Elias said. "Can you prove it?" "No, but who else would do it?" "Could have been an accident." "It wasn't." Hewitt set down the paper. "Look, Crow, I told you to keep your head down." "I did, and he came after me anyway." "So what do you want me to do?" "Your job. Arrest him." "On what evidence? You just said you can't prove it was him." "Then investigate." "I did. I rode out there this morning before you even got to town. Asked around. No one saw anything." Lydia stepped forward. "So you're just going to let him keep doing this?" Hewitt looked at her, something like pity in his eyes. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but unless you have proof, actual proof, there's nothing I can do." "That's not good enough," Elias said. "It's the law. The law is supposed to protect people. It does. When there's evidence." Elias's hands clenched into fists. "So we're on our own." "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." He turned and walked out, Lydia following. Outside, she grabbed his arm. "That was useless." "Yeah." "So now what?" Elias looked down the street toward the freight office where Barlow worked. "Now," he said quietly, "we make sure everyone knows what kind of man he really is." "How?" "We tell them." They walked to the center of town, near the general store where people gathered. Elias climbed onto the back of his wagon and raised his voice. "Listen up," he called out. People stopped, turned, stared. "Samuel Barlow burned my shed last night," Elias said, loud and clear. "And before that, he cut my fences and broke my tools. He's been trying to drive me off my land because I married the woman he wanted." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "I don't have proof," Elias continued, "but everyone here knows the kind of man he is. You've seen it. You've heard him talk. You know what he's capable of." Someone in the crowd shouted, "That's slander!" "It's the truth," Lydia said, stepping up beside Elias. "And if you're too afraid to admit it, that's on you. But we're not going to stay silent anymore." The crowd shifted, uncomfortable. Then a voice rang out from the back. "He's right." Everyone turned. It was Ruth, standing with her arms crossed. "Barlow's been a bully for years. We all know it. We just pretend we don't because it's easier." "That's not fair," someone protested. "Isn't it?" Ruth stepped forward. "How many of you have let him get away with things because he has money? Because he buys drinks and makes you feel important? How many of you have looked the other way?" Silence. Then another voice spoke up, an older man Elias recognized from the feed store. "He threatened my son once, said he'd ruin him if he didn't pay back a debt twice what it was worth." A woman added, "He tried to cheat me on a land deal." More voices joined in, small grievances, old wounds. The tide was turning, and then Barlow himself appeared, pushing through the crowd, face red with fury. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. Elias looked down at him. "The truth. You've got no right. I've got every right. You've been harassing me and my wife, and now everyone knows it." Barlow's hands shook with rage. "You're a liar." "Then prove it." The crowd watched, silent and tense. Barlow looked around, seeing the faces turned against him, seeing the doubt in their eyes. and Elias saw something flicker across his face. Fear. "This isn't over," Barlow said, voice low and dangerous. "Yeah," Elias said. "It is." Barlow turned and stormed off. The crowd slowly dispersed, murmuring. Elias climbed down from the wagon, legs shaking. Lydia grabbed his arm. "You did it." "Did I?" "You stood up to him, in front of everyone. Doesn't mean he'll stop. Maybe not. But now people are watching. That changes things." Elias hoped she was right. They climbed onto the wagon and headed home, the sun high overhead, the prairie stretching endlessly around them. And for the first time since this whole thing started, Elias felt like they might actually survive it. The ride back to the cabin was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet than before. Not the heavy silence of fear, but something lighter, almost like relief. Lydia sat beside Elias on the wagon bench, shoulder pressed against his, and neither of them moved away. "Do you think it worked?" she asked after a while. "I don't know," Elias said, "but it was something. It was more than something. You made them see him. They already saw him. They just didn't want to admit it. And now they have to." Elias glanced at her. "You're not worried about what he'll do next?" "Of course I am, but I'm less worried than I was this morning." She paused. "You stood up for us, in front of everyone. That means something." He wanted to tell her it might not be enough, that Barlow was the kind of man who got meaner when cornered, but he didn't want to take away the small victory they'd just won. So he just said, "Yeah, it does." When they got to the cabin, the charred remains of the shed were still smoking faintly in the afternoon sun. The sight of it turned Elias's stomach, but he forced himself to look at it head on. "We'll rebuild," Lydia said, following his gaze. "With what money?" "We'll figure it out. We always do." He looked at her, surprised by the certainty in her voice. A month ago, she'd been a woman with nothing, stepping off a train into a town that didn't want her. Now she was talking about rebuilding like it was already decided. "When did you get so stubborn?" he asked. She smiled. "I learned from the best." They spent the rest of the afternoon salvaging what they could from the wreckage. Most of the tools were ruined, warped by heat or buried under charred wood. But a few survived: a hammer, a saw, a box of nails that had somehow stayed intact. Lydia wiped soot off the hammer and handed it to Elias. "Start here." He took it, their fingers brushing. "You're bossy when you want to be." Someone has to be. They worked until the sun started to set, sorting through the debris, stacking anything salvageable in a pile near the cabin. When they finally stopped, both of them were covered in ash and sweat, exhausted but not defeated. Lydia looked at the pile of salvaged tools and smiled faintly. "Not much, but it's a start." "Yeah," Elias said, "it is." That night they washed up and ate a simple meal of beans and bread. The conversation was light, almost normal. They talked about small things, the garden, the weather, whether Dust needed new shoes. It felt like the kind of conversation married people were supposed to have. After dinner, Lydia stood and moved to the window, looking out at the darkening prairie. "What are you thinking about?" Elias asked. "Everything. Nothing." She turned to him. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for something else to go wrong." "Yeah, me too." "But it hasn't. Not yet." "Not yet." She crossed the room and sat beside him at the table. "Do you think we'll ever stop waiting for disaster?" "I don't know. Maybe that's just what life is. Waiting and hoping you're ready when it comes." She considered that. "That's bleak." "It's honest." "I suppose it is." She reached across the table and took his hand. "But I'd rather wait with you than be safe alone." Elias felt something tighten in his chest. "Lydia, I mean it," she interrupted. "Whatever happens next, I'm glad I'm here, with you." He squeezed her hand. "So am I." They sat like that for a while, hands clasped, the lamp flickering between them. Then Elias said, "I need to tell you something." She looked at him, concerned. "What?" "When Barlow came here, when he threatened you, I wanted to kill him." Lydia went still. "Not just stop him," Elias continued. "Kill him. I wanted to ride after him and put a bullet in him and make sure he never came near you again." "But you didn't." "No, because I was afraid of what it would make me, afraid that if I started down that road again, I wouldn't be able to stop." She didn't say anything, just listened. "I told myself I was being smart," Elias said. playing it safe. But the truth is, I was a coward. I let him walk away because I was more afraid of who I'd become than I was of what he might do to you. You're not a coward, Lydia said firmly. You're someone who knows the difference between justice and murder. That's not weakness, that's strength. Is it? Yes. She leaned forward. You could have killed him, easily, but you chose a different way. You chose to expose him instead, to let the town see what he really is. That took more courage than pulling a trigger. Elias wanted to believe her, but the guilt sat heavy in his chest. I should have done more, he said quietly. You did enough. She stood and moved around the table, sitting beside him. Elias, you're not the same man you were when you killed those men. You've changed, and the fact that you're afraid of becoming that person again proves it. How? Because people who don't care don't worry about it. They just do what they want and move on. But you care. You feel it. That makes you better than you think you are. He looked at her, at the fierce belief in her eyes, and felt something break open inside him. I love you, he said. The words came out rough and unplanned, but they were true. Lydia's eyes widened. What? I love you, he repeated. I don't know when it started. Maybe the first day when you got off that train and looked at me like I was crazy for helping you. Maybe later when you stayed even though you didn't have to. But it's true. I love you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Elias, you don't have to say it back, he added quickly. I just needed you to know. She laughed, shaky and wet. You idiot! Of course I love you. He stared at her. You do? Yes. I've loved you for weeks. I just didn't think you'd ever feel the same. Why not? Because I'm a mess. And you're... you. I'm a mess too. I know. She cupped his face in her hands. But you're my mess. And I'm yours. And that's enough. He kissed her then, slow and careful, like he was afraid she might disappear. She kissed him back, fierce and certain, like she was proving she wouldn't. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. So, Lydia said, smiling through her tears, what do we do now? Elias wiped her face gently. We keep going. Just like that? Just like that. She laughed and leaned her forehead against his. You make it sound so simple. It is. We wake up tomorrow. We rebuild the shed. We live our lives. And we don't let anyone take that away from us. Even Barlow? Especially Barlow. She smiled. All right. Then that's what we'll do. They went to bed that night wrapped around each other, closer than they'd ever been. And for the first time since they'd met, Elias felt like the future might actually hold something good. The next week passed without incident. No fires, no cut fences, no threats. Elias didn't trust it. He kept the rifle close and watched the horizon like a hawk. But nothing came. Lydia went back to work at the boarding house. Ruth said business was picking up, and she needed the extra hands. A few of the townspeople had started treating Lydia differently. Not friendly exactly, but less hostile. Small nods, brief greetings, acknowledgement that she existed. It wasn't much, but it was something. One afternoon, Ruth pulled Lydia aside. You heard the news? Ruth asked. What news? Barlow's leaving. Lydia's heart skipped. Leaving? Where? Colorado, someone said. He sold the freight company to a buyer out of Denver. Word is he's packing up and gone by the end of the month. Lydia felt like the ground had shifted under her feet. Why? Ruth shrugged. Who knows? Maybe he finally realized he wasn't as important as he thought. Or maybe he just got tired of being the villain. Do you think it's true? I don't know. But if it is, you and Crow can finally breathe. Lydia didn't know what to feel. Relief. Suspicion. Hope. When she told Elias that evening, he had the same reaction. Could be a trick, he said, or it could be real. Maybe. You don't believe it. I don't know what to believe. He set down his tools and looked at her. But if he's really leaving, then yeah, we can breathe. And if he's not, then we deal with it, like we always do. She smiled faintly. You're getting better at this hope thing. Don't get used to it. But over the next 2 weeks, the rumors proved true. Barlow sold his property, packed his belongings, and boarded a train heading west. The town watched him go, and no one threw him a party. When Elias heard the news from the feed store clerk, he stood there for a long moment, processing it. Barlow was gone. Just like that. He rode home faster than usual, and when he got there, Lydia was outside hanging laundry. She looked up when she heard the wagon. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. He's really gone." Her face lit up. "You're sure?" "Saw the clerk. He said Barlow got on the westbound train this morning. Didn't even say goodbye to anyone." Lydia dropped the sheet she was holding and ran to him. Elias caught her, and she buried her face in his chest, laughing and crying at the same time. "It's over," she said. "It's really over." He held her tight. "Yeah, it is." They stood there in the sun, holding each other, the wind whispering through the grass, and for the first time since Lydia had stepped off that train, Elias felt like they were safe. Life didn't become easy after Barlow left, but it became possible. Elias rebuilt the shed with lumber he bought on credit from the feed store. It took him 3 weeks, working every spare moment, but when it was finished, it stood solid and straight, better than the old one had been. Lydia planted flowers around the cabin, wild roses and prairie grass, things that could survive the harsh climate. She said it made the place feel less like a refuge and more like a home. Elias didn't argue. Ruth started sending more work Lydia's way and eventually offered her a permanent position at the boarding house. Lydia accepted, and the extra income helped them get back on their feet. The town slowly, grudgingly, began to accept them. Not everyone, but enough. People stopped whispering when they walked by. A few even nodded in greeting. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was tolerance. And that was enough. One evening in late summer, Elias came home to find Lydia sitting on the front step, holding something in her lap. "What's that?" he asked, climbing down from the wagon. She looked up, smiling. "Come see." He sat beside her and she held up a small wooden box. "I found it at the boarding house," she said. "Someone left it behind years ago. Ruth said I could have it." Elias opened the box. Inside was a set of old, tarnished silverware. "It's not much," Lydia said, but I thought, if we're going to have a home, we should have nice things, even small ones." He looked at her, at the hope in her eyes, and felt his throat tighten. "It's perfect," he said. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I never thought I'd have this." "Have what?" "A home. A husband. Someone who looks at me like I matter." "You do matter. I know. Because of you." He put his arm around her. "Not just because of me. You matter because you're you. I just helped you see it." She smiled. "We helped each other see it." "Yeah, we did." They sat there as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. After a while, Lydia said, "Do you ever think about the future?" "Sometimes. Why?" "I was thinking, maybe we could expand the cabin, add a room, maybe 2. Elias looked at her. "You planning on us staying here a while?" "I'm planning on us staying here forever." He smiled. "Forever's a long time." "I know, but I can't think of anyone I'd rather spend it with." He kissed the top of her head. "Me neither." They stayed outside until the stars came out, bright and endless, above them. Autumn came, and with it, the first real cold. Elias chopped wood for the stove, stacking it high against the side of the cabin. Lydia made preserves from the last of the garden vegetables, filling jars that lined the shelves. They worked together in comfortable silence, the rhythm of their days settling into something steady and sure. One morning, Elias woke to find Lydia standing by the window, wrapped in a blanket, watching the sunrise. "You all right?" he asked. She turned, smiling. "More than all right. What are you thinking about?" "Everything. How far we've come. How different things are now." He got out of bed and joined her at the window. The prairie stretched out before them, endless and golden in the early light. "You ever regret it?" he asked. "Coming here?" "Not for a second." She looked at him. "Do you regret taking me in?" "No." "Not even when things were hard?" "Especially not then." She smiled and leaned into him. "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" "Yeah, we are." And he believed it. Winter settled over the land like a blanket, cold and quiet. Elias and Lydia spent the long evenings by the fire, talking about everything and nothing. She taught him card games she'd learned as a child. He taught her how to whittle, and she made a lopsided bird that he kept on the shelf anyway. They laughed more, fought less, learned how to be married, one day at a time. One night, as snow fell softly outside, Lydia said, "I want to tell you something." Elias looked up from the piece of wood he was carving. "What?" "I've been thinking about my father, about what he said to me before he died." He set down the knife. "You don't have to." "I want to." She took a breath. "He told me I was worthless, and for a long time I believed him. I thought if I could just be useful enough, good enough, someone would want me. But that's not how it works, is it?" "No, it's not. People don't want you because of what you can do for them. They want you because of who you are. And it took me a long time to understand that." She looked at him. "But I get it now. You didn't help me because I could cook or clean or be useful. You helped me because you saw me, really saw me. And that changed everything." Elias felt something twist in his chest. "You did the same for me." "Did I?" "Yeah, you saw past the scars and the reputation and all the things I'd done. You saw who I was trying to be, and that made me want to be better." She reached across the space between them and took his hand. "We saved each other." "Yeah, we did." They sat like that, hands clasped, the fire crackling between them. Outside, the snow continued to fall, quiet and clean, covering the world in white. Spring came slowly, melting the snow inch by inch. One morning in early April, Elias woke to find Lydia standing outside, barefoot in the dirt, looking at something near the cabin. He pulled on his boots and went to join her. "What are you looking at?" he asked. She pointed. A single rose bush had started to bloom near the corner of the cabin, its petals bright red against the pale wood. "I planted it last fall," she said. "I didn't think it would survive the winter." "But it did." "Yeah, it did." They stood there looking at the fragile, stubborn flower. "It's like us," Lydia said quietly. Elias smiled. "Yeah, I guess it is." She turned to him. "I'm happy, Elias. Really happy. I didn't think I'd ever be able to say that, but I am. So am I." She kissed him, soft and sure, and he kissed her back. When they pulled apart, she said, "I love you. I love you too." And they meant it. One afternoon a few weeks later, Elias surprised Lydia with something he'd been working on in secret. "Close your eyes," he said. She gave him a suspicious look. "Why?" "Just do it." She sighed, but obeyed. He led her outside, guiding her carefully. "All right, open." She opened her eyes and gasped. Sitting on the porch was a rocking chair, simple, sturdy, made from the same wood he'd used to rebuild the shed. "You made this?" she asked, voice shaking. "Yeah." She ran her hand over the smooth armrest. "When?" "At night, after you fell asleep." She looked at him, tears in her eyes. "Elias, you said you wanted this place to feel like home," he said. "I figured every home needs a rocking chair." She laughed and cried at the same time, then threw her arms around him. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." "You're welcome." She sat in the chair and rocked gently, smiling through her tears. Elias watched her, feeling something settle in his chest, something warm and sure. This was home. Not the cabin or the land. This, them, and no one could take that away. Summer returned, hot and dry. Elias and Lydia worked the land together, tending the garden, repairing fences, living their lives. Ruth stopped by one afternoon with news. "Town's planning a harvest festival in September," she said. "They asked if you two would help." Lydia looked at Elias, surprised. He shrugged. "If you want to." "I do," she said. "I think I do." Ruth smiled. "Good. It'll be nice to have you there." When the festival came, Elias and Lydia rode into town together. People greeted them. Not warmly exactly, but not coldly either. They helped set up tables, served food, laughed with neighbors they were just beginning to know. At one point, Lydia looked at Elias across the crowd and smiled. He smiled back. And he realized something. They'd done it. They'd survived. They'd built something real out of nothing but stubbornness and hope. And that was enough. But years passed. The cabin grew. Elias added a second room, then a third. Lydia filled them with furniture and warmth and life. The town changed too, slowly. People came and went. New families moved in. Old grudges faded. Elias and Lydia became part of the fabric of Mill Haven, no longer outcasts but neighbors, contributors, friends even. They never forgot where they'd come from, the fear, the loneliness, the desperation, but they didn't let it define them either. One evening, many years later, Elias and Lydia sat on the porch in the rocking chair he'd made. He'd built a second one so they could sit together, watching the sun set over the prairie. "You ever think about that first day?" Lydia asked. "When I got off the train?" "Sometimes." "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't stepped forward?" Elias thought about it. "Yeah, I do." "And?" "I think I'd still be alone, and you'd be somewhere else, probably still running." She nodded. "I think so too." "You regret any of it?" "Not for a second." She looked at him. "You?" "No." She took his hand. "We did good, didn't we?" "Yeah, we did." They sat in comfortable silence, rocking gently, the wind whispering through the grass. The prairie stretched out before them, vast and endless, full of possibility. And Elias realized something he'd never quite put into words before. Life wasn't about being perfect. It wasn't about being fearless or flawless or always knowing the right thing to do. It was about showing up, about making choices, even hard ones, and living with the consequences. About finding someone who saw you, really saw you, and choosing to see them back. It was about building something, brick by brick, day by day, even when the world tried to tear it down. It was about love. Not the easy kind. The hard kind. The kind that required work and forgiveness and a stubborn refusal to give up. And it was about home. Not a place, but a feeling. The knowledge that you mattered to someone, and they mattered to you, and that was enough. Lydia leaned her head on his shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything," he said, "and nothing." "That's not an answer." "I'm thinking about how lucky I am." She smiled. "Lucky how?" "Lucky that you got on that train. Lucky that I was there. Lucky that we were both stubborn enough to make this work." "It wasn't luck," she said. "It was choice." "Yeah, it was." They rocked in silence, watching the stars come out one by one. And in that moment, under that endless sky, Elias felt something he'd never thought he'd feel again. Peace. Not because life was easy. It wasn't. Not because they were perfect. They weren't. But because they'd chosen each other, and they kept choosing each other, every day, through fear and fire and everything in between. And that choice had changed everything. The prairie wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of wild roses and dry grass. Lydia squeezed his hand. Elias squeezed back. And they sat there together, two people who'd been thrown away by the world, who'd found each other in the wreckage, and who'd built something beautiful out of the broken pieces. They sat there, and they were home.